Just recently, a friend of mine who knows my interest in all things Bob Dylan sent me an article written by Maureen Dowd, who's a columnist for the New York Times. And it was about Bob Dylan, but it was hardly an encomium. She was very angry with Bob Dylan because on his recent tour through China, unprecedented by the way, Dylan's never been to China. It was a big deal just to get him in there. She claims that he succumbed to the demands of the Chinese government and agreed not to sing any of his revolutionary protest songs, Blowing in the Wind and The Hard Rain's Gonna Fall and The Times They Are Changing, so that he caved in and proved himself to be just one more, entertainer willing to do anything to make money. And she said, how unlike the young Bob Dylan, who famously walked off of the Ed Sullivan Show when they told him he couldn't sing Talkin' John Birch Society Blues. There was this little parody of the John Birch Society. And they told him, it's too controversial. And Dylan walked off the set and didn't cave in. So she said, there's the young Bob Dylan, all heroic and so on. And here's this old Bob Dylan who just caves in to the pressure from the communist government. Okay. I read the article, and my dander was up because I don't like Bob Dylan being raked over the coals. I mean, he's one of my great heroes. And so I just went on this site called Bob Links, which is a site that links or lists all of Bob Dylan's songs when he's on tour and gives little amateur reviews from concert goers. Anyway, I checked it out to see what did he sing in China. And I must say, the minute I saw it, I laughed out loud because I noticed that Bob Dylan, his first concert in China, opens with one of his most explicitly Christian songs, a song from 1979 called Gotta Serve Somebody. It won a Grammy, by the way. It was #1 song when it came out. Gotta Serve Somebody is based upon a passage from the book of Joshua. Joshua has just led the conquest of the Promised Land. He now gathers all Israel, and he says, okay, here's the deal. Are you going to worship the gods of these people, or are you going to worship the true God? As for me and my family, we will walk with the Lord. Okay, it's an impressive either or. False gods or the true God? Well, Bob Dylan puts that into his distinctive poetry. You might be the ambassador to England or France. You might like to gamble. You might like to dance. You might be the heavyweight champion of the world. You might be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you got to serve somebody. You have to serve somebody. It might be the devil. It might be the Lord. But you've got to serve somebody. In other words, you've got to decide. It's a stark either or. Well, that's why I laughed out loud. Bob Dylan, he's no longer a revolutionary. Come on. Here he is in communist China. This country led for decades by one of the worst and most bloodthirsty tyrants in history, Mao Zedong, a country which has systematically persecuted Christians, putting many millions of them to death. And the first song he sings is, you got to serve somebody. You got to make a decision. Is it the true God or one of these false gods and their various avatars? Now, for my money, Maureen Dowd, that's pretty darn revolutionary. Now, the next night, he appears, I think Shanghai the first night, Beijing the second night. The set list was he open up with another of his explicitly Christian songs. So he sings a song called Gonna Change My Way of Thinking. And I think it's the second to last verse, has these rather uncompromising words. Jesus said, be ready. You know not the hour which I come. Jesus said, be ready. You know not the hour which I come. He who is not for me is against me, just so you know where he's coming from. That's the line, Well, Maureen Dowd, for my money, that's also pretty darn revolutionary. Again, in a country where, for decades now, Christians have been persecuted and people like Mao Zedong and his followers have been proposed as the absolute, unquestioned authorities. For Bob Dylan to say, now in China, as the first song he sings, to say, no, there's this rather stark demand, coming from Jesus, that it's about him, that he's the Lord, he's the center. For my money, that's about as revolutionary as you can get. See, here's the thing I think Maureen Dowd is missing. Bob Dylan, all his career has been spiritual. He's been religious and biblical. It's wrong to say, he was, a political revolutionary in his youth. Then he, experimented with Christianity. Now he's into some other thing. The golden thread that runs all through Bob Dylan's work from 1962 to today is a biblical sensibility. As I've said before, what's the answer is blowing in the wind? What's the wind but a symbol of the Holy Spirit? A hard rain's going to fall. Or like his great song called Down in the Flood. This flood is going to come. What is that? Any biblical person knows. It's the flood of God's judgment, you know. So his revolutionary songs from the 60s, the times they are changing, very good. It's filled with biblical imagery, you know. That's the golden thread. And that's what's made Bob Dylan, I would say, properly revolutionary all his career long. So I was just really amused by this whole, you know, kerfluffle. And the more I looked at it, I thought, boy, is she missing what is truly revolutionary about what Bob Dylan did in China.